Amen.
R.I.P. Freud, you would have bawled yourself over the latest banger House of the Dragon just dropped. Jokes apart, I think we can all agree that House of the Dragon would not dare to claim itself as a Game of Thrones sequel without an over-the-top incestuous sex scene to derail every other sex scene of the show. While Regent is relatively at a standstill with both factions dealing with the aftermath of the battle at Rook's Rest, our man Daemon is still stuck in Harrenhal, playing Bob the Builder in the middle of a war. Like, for Christ's sake, someone send this man back to his wife. He's clearly not okay. In the most recent episode of Daemon's spooky adventures in Westeros's famous haunted castle, we see the rogue prince's condition get worse as Alice Rivers screws with his mind. Honestly, this episode is literally the peak of the Targaryen family dynamics, taking an even stranger turn. Till now, in all of his hallucinatory trips, Daemon was being haunted by his failures. But as the show tries to dig deeper into his psyche, the rogue prince is now being haunted by his most disturbing desire. Dude's literally living through his nightmare with both his eyes wide open. He can't eat or sleep as he's dragged from one hallucination to the next. Till now, in these visions, Daemon has beheaded a younger version of his current wife and has seen his dead wife serving him wine. But Episode 5 unravels Daemon's darkest desires with an Oedipal twist. Us fans have been screaming at the top of our voices since Episode 3, begging him to get the hell out of that cursed castle and not indulge with the local witch. But our man here is busy doing his mom in his dreams. I was just as puzzled as you were when we saw Daemon in bed with a mysterious silver-haired woman who ends up calling him her favorite son. While it seems House of the Dragon is working overtime to normalize the entire taboo around mommy issues, first with Aemond and now with Daemon, there's actually a proper reason behind the Targaryens' unhealthy obsessions with their moms. So without wasting another moment, let's discuss the real reason why Daemon hallucinated himself getting it on with his mom. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
The fearless dragon rider.
What happens in the scene with Daemon and his mother? At the beginning, we can't seem to figure out who this beautiful silver-haired woman is that the rogue Prince Daemon is seen to have sex with. Earlier, in a very brief glimpse of her in one of the Season 2 trailers for the prequel show, it seemed like it was Viserys' first wife Aemma Arryn with him. But soon we find out how disgustingly wrong we really were. In the scene, this woman is the only one speaking, constantly addressing Daemon and comparing him to Viserys. She's pretty much fetting him with one compliment after another while they're actively having sex. Amidst their lovemaking, this mysterious Targaryen woman praises Daemon as a fearless dragon rider and the finest swordsman in the realm. She further strokes his ego by mentioning how he was destined to wear the crown, unlike Viserys. However, this idyllic fantasy is abruptly cut short for him when he sees blood on her hands. But what really shocks us to the core is when this woman whispers in Daemon's ear and tells him how he has always been her favorite son. This is the moment that makes our jaws drop, as it becomes obvious that the woman Daemon has been fantasizing about all this time was his mother, Alyssa Targaryen, who had died when he was just 3 years old. Just when we think Daemon has reached a new level of darkness, dude comes up and pretty much smashes every parameter of insanity he set up before. Ever since the rogue prince took over Harrenhal, he's been living from one dark moment to another. While all his visions seem to be a joint influence of the concoction Alice Rivers has been feeding him, teamed up with the cursed nature of Harrenhal and the weird wood bed he's been sleeping on, we know one thing for sure, that each of his hallucinations are a manifestation of Daemon's subconscious, his insecurities, fear, guilt, resentment, and desires. Through young Rhaenyra, his deaf wife Laena, and his mother, Alyssa, all of these factors are basically holding the rogue prince down by the neck and forcing him to see himself for what he is. Of course, the series doesn't mention Alyssa Targaryen much, except in the first season when King Viserys mentions how Daemon was always his mother's favorite son. Just before we get to Daemon's disturbing disturbing vision in episode 5, Baela and Rhaenyra also discussed how Daemon was upset that Rhaenys had claimed Meleys as her dragon before he could, likely because it had been his mother's dragon before she died. It's almost funny how House of the Dragon never has to explicitly name Alyssa for us to know it's her, because the show does a great job of portraying her just as the young, spirited, and passionate woman she is in Fire and Blood. In her last shot, she has blood on her chest and looks more pale, like a corpse, which probably stands as a resemblance of what she looked like during her death at 24, a year after a difficult birth to a son who did not survive. Who is Alyssa Targaryen? One thing that's become evidently very clear to us by now is that House of the Dragon has a bit too many Targaryens in the mix. It's almost impossible to keep track of everyone, with most characters named Rhaenys, Aegon, Aemon, Aemond, and Daemon. Believe it or not, HBO's prequel series has actually simplified the family tree for us by only focusing on the main players in the Civil War known in George R.R. Martin's books as the Dance of the Dragons. With that being said, even with her name rarely mentioned, the presence of one long-dead Targaryen princess still manages to haunt the characters in House of the Dragon Season 2, Episode 5, Regent. And that's Alyssa Targaryen for you. In George R.R. Martin's books, Alyssa Targaryen was described as the charismatic, tomboyish daughter of King Jaehaerys, the Conciliator, and the Good Queen Alysanne. Unlike the idealized version seen in Daemon's visions, the book actually mentions how Alyssa had mismatched eyes, dirty blonde hair, and a broken nose. So not exactly like the ravishing beauty we saw on the screen. It was said that as a child, she would follow her older brother Balon around so much that it was annoying. When her father thought about marrying her to the eldest brother Aemon, their mother quickly shut it down, saying Alyssa was meant for Balon. Eventually, Balon the Brave fell in love with his sister and got married to her when she came of age. Their wedding sparked a lot of gossip due to their super loud lovemaking on the wedding night, so I guess that's what they meant by calling her a wild beauty. As a young woman, Alyssa had claimed the dragon Meleys and was the first rider of the dragon before Rhaenys Targaryen. She absolutely loved taking her infant sons, Viserys and Daemon, flying with her on Meleys, and it's said that Alyssa flew with her sons just a few days after their birth, alongside her husband Balon, who rode on Balerion the Black Dread. She was also one of the few children of Jaehaerys and Alysanne to survive to adulthood, though she died from complications after giving birth to her third son, Aegon, who also passed away 6 months later. In Fire and Blood, Alyssa was famous for her ferocity, roughness, wit, and headstrong nature. Because Alyssa died when Viserys and Daemon were young children, it's why House of the Dragon's Alice Rivers tells Daemon how it was a shame he really never knew her, given that he was only a child when his mother passed. Why does Daemon fantasize himself in bed with his mother? So Daemon visualizing himself going to town on the same place he came out of is undoubtedly the most disturbing portrayal of Targaryen incest in House of the Dragon yet. While the show and its entire universe has evidently normalized the concept of incest, especially considering the other marriages between cousins, uncle and niece, and siblings, but honestly, I think mother and son is where the good people of the world draw the line. Sigmund Freud would really have a field day while analyzing Daemon's psychology, because one classic interpretation of his dream about Alyssa aligns with Freud's controversial Oedipus complex theory, which suggests that often men unconsciously develop a sexual attraction to their mother and become hostile toward their father. I don't know if you've noticed, but even in the past, Daemon has often equated sex with power. Case in point is how seducing young Rhaenyra was his way of getting closer to the Iron Throne and his perceived inheritance as the true heir of the Seven Kingdoms, while sleeping with Mazaria gave him more influence as the Prince of Fleabottom. Daemon's superiority complex and sense of power now seem to be rooted in the belief that he was his mother's favorite child. So, in a way, his vision of having sex with her perversely connects him to the original source of his confidence and authority. It all comes to a full circle as we understand that Daemon is most aroused when he's dominating others, and no one instilled this feeling in him more than his mother, Alyssa. Throughout House of the Dragon, we see how Daemon's confidence has taken a hit, especially after his fight with Rhaenyra, where she makes it evidently clear how she can no longer trust or respect him. We also see him struggling to earn the respect and loyalty of the rest of the realm, which overwhelms him as he feels how he's losing grip on his power. So, as Daemon finds himself wanting to regain control over this lost power, he subconsciously finds himself drawn to women who have always supported him without any judgment and embraced him for his darkness. Even though Alyssa passed away when Daemon was young, deep down, he's been seeking intimacy from the sort of women who remind him of her, and that includes Rhaenyra. This vision unravels why Daemon is such an insecure person. Like I've mentioned before, the scene between Alyssa and Daemon is definitely pushing the kind of boundaries nobody has ever thought of seeing in House of the Dragon before. I mean, even Game of Thrones didn't cross this line, and we've seen some pretty disturbing things in that show. We've accepted the Targaryens' practice of incest as a part of their fictional world and culture, given that they see to it that their ethnic supremacy is maintained by marrying siblings and close relatives to each other, as it would help them maintain the purity of their house. As the world's last dragon riders, the Targaryens rarely married outside their family. Even then, a consensual relationship between a mother and a son will never be off-putting because incest between a parent and child was the one line these Targaryens never crossed. Now, I don't know why they never considered inbreeding in this case, but I guess they realized that marrying a child to its parent would be going a bit too far. But still, this raises a troubling question. Did Daemon really have romantic feelings for his mother? Or did Alyssa harbor similar feelings for her son? Firstly, I would like to remind all of you that Daemon was only 3 years old when Alyssa passed away, which would have made any such notions much more unsettling than they already are at the moment. Instead, the vision seems to fulfill something Daemon has yearned for throughout his whole life, which is the love and validation of a mother. While Daemon Targaryen had an emotionally unavailable mother who could never pacify their emotional needs, Daemon grew up without knowing his mother at all. All he knew is that his mother loved him the most and favored him more than the brother who never deserved to be king. This perspective also helps us make sense of all of Daemon's sexual encounters throughout House of the Dragon. If you remember, in the series premiere, it was Mysaria who first affirmed his status as the trueborn heir and a rider to one of the fiercest dragons in the realm. Again, later in Driftmark, a few days after his wife Rhaenyra passed away, Rhaenyra was the one who initially pursued him. Now, both Mysaria and Rhaenyra boosted Daemon's confidence by making him feel more powerful, attractive, and masculine, which gave him the idea that his entire existence was a temptation to women. Yeah, in a way, that also checks out the reason behind his superiority complex. But one thing is for sure, very few people in Daemon's life have given him the kind of approval he craves so deeply. Despite how amazing he is as a warrior, Daemon somehow always lived in the shadow of his older brother, who never paid attention to him and even banished him from court more than once. And now that Rhaenyra was living up to her mantle as the true queen, Daemon again felt like his strength was being overshadowed by his niece. Alyssa was the only one who provided him with unconditional love and could make him feel more content in a platonic way. However, the rogue prince is way in over his head to actually understand love from a woman unless it's expressed sexually. So he imagines himself having sex with his mother to convince himself to go on edge and wobble down the power-tripping lane that reassures him that only Daemon deserves to be king. How does this disturbing hallucination change Daemon? If you remember, when Daemon starts to kiss who we believed to be a mysterious Targaryen woman in the scene, Alyssa mentions how Viserys lacked the constitution to rule the Iron Throne, even if he loved the realm. But Daemon, on the other hand, was made to wear it. After which we see Daemon going down on her, which basically means that he is pleased to hear what she has just said, and in turn is pleasuring her. He then looks at her before kissing her again until he's shocked to see a trail of blood smeared down her chest as her face turns pale and she calls her his favorite son. But the real horror descends upon him when Sir Simon Strong interrupts this scene while asking if he liked the duck. This is when we realize this is just another one of Daemon's waking visions, which are now only intensifying ever since he drank whatever potion the Witch of Harrenhal made him drink. After Daemon wakes up from his vision in House of the Dragon, obviously he feels ashamed of himself imagining a sexual relationship with his mother, but it somehow also spurs him right into action. The vision makes him realize that he needs to overcome all his subconscious insecurities from his dreams and seize the power back for himself in reality. This is what makes him delusional in his pride, prompting him to come to a decision to challenge both Rhaenyra and Aegon's claim for the Iron Throne. Even Simon Strong looks at him with absolute disappointment in his his face because he can see how Daemon is screwing things up one after the other. Plus, after Alyssa fed his ego to believe he was stronger than Viserys, Rhaenyra, Aegon, and any other contender for the throne, Daemon's natural response to this manifests through violence and betrayal. Naturally, Daemon's story at Harrenhal has only led him to more horrors, and after he's seen the vision of his mother, his entire self-conception and facade are slowly crumbling at Harrenhal in House of the Dragon. Within Harrenhal's cursed walls, his solitude and nightmares, influenced by Alice River's powers, have reduced him to a helpless state where he finds himself seeking the comfort of his mother while his ambition slips away. He's also forced to confront the person he has become since her death, which makes him rethink if his mother would have really loved the man he has now turned into. You have to understand that Daemon has been rejected by everyone he sought power over, be it Rhaenyra, Viserys, the Black Council, and even his own children. So now he refuses to wash away the blood on his hands, and instead he chooses to fully embrace it, as he continues to chase the favoritism he once raved upon and the superiority he could never reclaim before. Did Rhaenyra somehow become the embodiment of a mother Daemon never had while growing up? Losing his mother at such a young age is a traumatic ordeal for any child to deal with. And for Daemon, who is a second son, that trauma was even more intense, as his brother was always favored for everything while he stood there, forgotten beneath Viserys' shadow. After he lost Alyssa at the age of 3, Daemon only received any attention when he acted out, as the world was too focused on the older brother who was destined to inherit the Iron Throne. It was not until Rhaenyra became a teenager that he found someone who was worthy enough to replace the memory and essence of his mother. Rhaenyra and Alyssa had a similar spirit that only Daemon recognized and was inevitably drawn to. Both of them were wild, rebellious, and unafraid to speak their minds, irrespective of who stood before them. Plus, Rhaenyra was the only person who found Daemon's charisma and defiance alluring. She basically simped over him since she could learn to form an opinion and praised him for pretty much everything, as she saw him as the ideal Targaryen, just like Alyssa did. In Rhaenyra, Daemon finally found the validation he had been missing since his mother died. To top that off, the age gap between them gave Daemon a sense of control over Rhaenyra that he definitely lacked with others. Through their personal conversations every now and then, she managed to fill the void left by his mother and somehow pacified the mommy issues, which made him develop an attention-seeking personality. But to Daemon's surprise, everything changed once Rhaenyra grew up, as she tempered the wild traits that she once shared with Alyssa after beginning to seriously embrace her responsibilities as Viserys' heir and mother. This is when he begins to think that Rhaenyra has begun to resemble Viserys more in personality, as she becomes skeptical of Daemon, shows hesitation at the thought of shedding blood, and prioritizes the duties of being a queen over being Daemon's wife. Rhaenyra didn't just free herself from his influence, but also erased any trace of Alyssa's spirit in her. So, once again, Daemon found himself lost, desperately seeking any opportunity to grasp the power that Rhaenyra won't just hand over to him. Many believe that Prince Aemond is Daemon's worst enemy in House of the Dragon, but in reality, his worst enemy is his own need for admiration and validation. What I'm trying to say is, Daemon imagining himself having sex with his mother is not about physical attraction, it's about the attention she gave him. Daemon yearns to be worshipped in a way, and this dream is a coping mechanism for losing that kind of attention that Rhaenyra once showered him with. Now, his dreams push him farther away from Rhaenyra and closer to the distant memory of Alyssa, leaving him unanchored in reality, while the world around him is at war. How does Daemon's mommy issues differ from that of Aemond? We all know by now that in many ways, Daemon and Aemond are two sides of the same coin. They're both impulsive yet intelligent second sons who suffer from a superiority complex and believe themselves to be the only ones worthy enough in the entire realm to wield the powers of the Iron Throne. Both of them grew up in the shadow of their older brothers. While Daemon had Viserys, who never held him close or trusted him enough to give him a seat at his small council, Aemond had Aegon, who has been his biggest bully since childhood. Even if Daemon remotely loved Viserys enough to bend his knee in front of him from time to time, Aemond pretty much roasted his brother and seized his power in the council, while Aegon withered away in bed. But it's true that both of them had absent mothers. At least Daemon could say his mother died, which left a hole in his heart and turned him into the person he is today. Aemond, on the other hand, had an emotionally unavailable mother, who only taught her children to hate and resent their cousins and and nephews. Alicent's resentment towards Rhaenyra manifested through her sons. She never showed them a shred of motherly love, and either focused on cleaning up the mess Aegon kept creating or getting it on with Sir Criston Cole. She never took a stand for Aemond in front of her brother, and allowed him to get humiliated time after time. Alicent never cared enough to realize how Aemond felt when everyone made fun of him for not having claimed a dragon. And even when he did claim Vhagar, he had to lose an eye for that. So in one way or another, the arrogance in him manifested through the constant feeling of not feeling whole and needing to prove himself at every occasion. Because his mother never really opened up her love to him or really understood the emotional turmoil he has to live through, Aemond became reserved, calculative, and just pure evil as compared to Daemon, who has been seen to let go of himself in front of the people he loved. Damn, Freud would have absolutely loved doing a case study on these guys. With that being said, it really remains to be seen if Daemon manages to snap out of his delusions anytime soon and get the hell back to his wife. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comment box below. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.